Rod, one major subplot in the broader culture war that you've been following closer than many people for longer than many people, and it's suddenly a pretty big topic of conversation across the West, is what's been dubbed kind of the re-enchantment, but spiritual revival as well, especially among younger men. So in that context, I had to ask you about this news today about Jonathan Rinderknecht. He's a 29-year-old who the feds have named today in a press conference, quote, as an arsonist who started the devastating Palisades fire in California. Officials say he used ChatGPT to create pictures of people running away from a big fire, and he was listening to music about starting fires. So what we have here is sort of the flip side of young men like Charlie Kirk digging deeper and deeper into their faith. It looks like what we have here is an example of, as Erica Kirk put it, a young man, the likes of which Kirk was trying to save, ending his life. But Rod, in this case, I want to ask you particularly about ChatGPT, because you've written a lot about the potential for infiltration of ChatGPT or powers coming with ChatGPT that people may be unaware of. What's your reaction?
Yeah, when I was working on my book, Living in Wonder, which is about Christian re-enchantment broadly.
It's a wonderful book, by the way. Everyone should get it. Yes.
Thank you. I was really shocked to learn that there are no small number of people at senior levels in Silicon Valley who see AI not just as a tool, but as a sort of high-tech Ouija board through which higher intelligences, as they put it, can communicate with us, and they will lead us to a brighter, richer, more prosperous, happier future. And this really shocked me, because you don't think of Silicon Valley people as being into the occult, but it turns out a lot of them are. Now, I'm not saying that, the demons are in ChatGPT, right. but I do think, and this is based on talking to actual working exorcists, that there is some potential for these things to be misused by evil spirits. Now, a lot of people will laugh at this, but let me tell you what, if you actually talk to people who have come out of the occult or talk to exorcists who dealt with it face to face, it's no laughing matter. And look, I use Grok for fact checking and things like that. I don't think every time you get on AI, you're dancing with the devil. But what's really interesting, Emily, is to see the number of people who have surrendered to what they're calling AI psychosis. They begin to think that AI is a god that's telling them what to do and telling them that they are God. The New York Times did a story earlier this year about a 28-year-old married woman who spends 60 hours a week on ChatGPT with her online lover, Leo. Now, she knows that Leo is just a machine. He's not a real person, but he gives her the good feelings that she can't get from her husband. So she's willing to entertain this lie and treat it as if it's her partner because of the feelings. And this is the great concern I have, leaving aside the spiritual aspect of it. If people have come to believe that good feeling, a sense of well-being, a sense of happiness or exaltation is more important than the truth, then we're done. We're done as a culture. And by the way, in that New York Times story, the husband didn't mind that his wife does this because he spends all his time with online porn. I mean, we are separating ourselves from reality. And I don't know how we keep together a liberal democracy, much less a society, if people give up any care about truth. And finally, this is what Hannah Arendt, the great 20th century political philosopher, said was one sign of coming totalitarianism, when people cease to care about truth and instead only cared about having the things they already believed or wanted to believe affirmed.
And the flip side of this, again, Rod, it seems to me there's almost a heightening of the contradictions, not necessarily in a Leninist sense, but in the sense that as these contradictions are heightened, literally, when you are, a curious young man. Charlie Kirk, for example, talked about struggling with porn addiction and those sorts of things himself. And you are just a normal young guy in the United States, and you want to live a normal, happy life. And you look around and you see the ravages of this ultra high technology. it can have the effect of not everyone, but sending some people further and further into faith in this way that, Michael Knowles talks about how he grew up, really inspired by the new atheists and Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and left that because he realized there was something much richer in the alternative. And it seems to me that's what's happening right now is where both of these things are growing. We have this sort of secularism growing and the spirituality growing alongside it.
Well, yeah, and I got to tell you, I wrote a piece for Barry Weiss's online newspaper, The Free Press, earlier this year about the pilgrimage to Chartres. Chartres is a famous French cathedral, about 60 miles from Paris. Every year for the past 43 years, about 20,000 young French traditionalist Catholics do a 3-day walk to Chartres. They camp along the way, they sing hymns, they pray, they worship. I went to do a story about it, even though I'm not a Catholic, I'm Orthodox. And it was astonishing. The average age of these kids is 19. And these kids were desperate for faith, for roots, for community, for meaning, for purpose. When I interviewed a bunch of these kids, the main storyline was, we have been raised with nothing and we're desperate for something. And they believe that they can find that something in traditional Christianity. Now, as I said, I'm Eastern Orthodox. All of my friends who are in Eastern Orthodox churches back in the US say they are overwhelmed with young people, especially young men, who are seeking something deeper, not just a sort of happy, clappy megachurch Christianity or a boring political sermons, but something that will give them deeper roots about the meaning of life. So in many ways, this is a great time. One of my English friends I was having dinner with tonight is an Anglican priest, and said that, the churches in England, the Anglican churches that go woke and only care about, climate change, Ukraine, whatever the woke thing of the day is, they're dying out. But the Anglican parishes that really go deep, they are thriving, and they're seeing so many young people, especially young men, come in. So there's schisms happening even within the churches.
Well, that's such an interesting example in the Anglican respect, because there's no constituency for the sort of secular, watered-down Christianity, whereas the constituency is for the deep traditional Christianity. And that actually is, that was sort of the history of mainline Protestantism over the last 30 or so years. As a Protestant, I guess I can say that. It's what happened with ALCA, evangelical Lutheran churches. And they're drying up, and they were supposed to be the future.
Yeah, and it has to be said, I think Allie Beth Stuckey has said this on her X account, that even though a lot of people are going to the Catholic Church, leaving evangelicalism, the fact is, for every one convert the Catholics get, 8 Catholics leave. Well, I can tell you as a former Catholic, which ones are leaving: those that go to liberal churches or churches that are so mushy that they don't give people anything solid to hold on to. The Catholic churches that are thriving are those that actually teach the real thing. I think the same is true for Orthodoxy. It's funny. This conversation reminds me of this young evangelical megachurch couple who came to our tiny Orthodox Christian mission in Baton Rouge, where I was living in 2020. And they came during COVID. And we said, we're glad to have you here, but why are you here? Because Orthodoxy is kind of weird in an American context. And they said that COVID was like an apocalypse for them. It showed them how fragile our civilization is. And they realized that the sort of megachurch Christianity that they were used to was not giving them the spiritual and theological and moral depth and discipline that they would need to make it through a real crisis. So that's why they came to our church. Now, I'm not proselytizing here. I'm just telling people who are listening, whatever your tradition is, you better get into one that takes this stuff seriously and does not have its head in the ground and is just there to sort of anesthetize you about the reality of the crisis we're in, but one that gives you something real with which you can resist and build a life of joy and resilience.
So beautifully put, Rod. Recently, I learned about colostrum. Have you learned about it? It is the very first milk known as liquid gold. If you listen to the show a lot, you probably thought I was going to say that in a Trump voice because I did it that way the first time and now I feel trapped. So I pivoted there. But It's known as liquid gold that babies receive from their mothers after birth, packed with proteins, natural growth factors, antimicrobial peptides that work to enhance your immune response, reduce inflammation, repair, and balance gut lining, reduce bloating, and make your hair and skin look amazing. Today's sponsor, Cowboy Colostrum, offers the highest quality cow colostrum available in the U.S., 100% made in America from 100% American grass-fed cows. Don't you love that? They don't overprocess or strip their colostrum, leaving it whole, full fat, and high protein for ultimate nutrient density. It's the highest quality bovine colostrum you can buy. Highest quality bovine you can buy. Cowboy is easy to drink. It's great, made with natural, delicious ingredients and no artificial flavors. Simply add a 3-gram scoop of either their chocolate, Madagascar vanilla, or strawberry into your coffee or smoothie. Personally, I love the strawberry, and I love it with milk. So for a limited time, our listeners get up to 25% off their entire order. Just head to cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty and use code afterparty at checkout. That's 25% off when you use code afterparty at cowboycolostrum.com/afterparty. After you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. So please support our show and tell them our show sent you.